baby.
Wow.
Is that a dinosaur? So, as in gender and sex are two different things?
Yes. I believe, at least personally.
Sure, okay, fine.
A quiet boardroom, a high-profile diversity initiative, and a sudden clash of ideals. What happens when the pursuit of progress meets the cold, unyielding edge of reality? This is where theory and practice collide, leaving behind a trail of hard truths and uncomfortable moments. In the midst of headlines and hashtags, the story behind these moments reveals something far deeper, exposing the unintended consequences of a movement meant to reshape the world. And here, in the raw aftermath, the facade of perfection begins to crack. Alright, here we go. At what age should someone be allowed to transition? Cue the debate of the century. One student starts strong, dropping 16 to 18 like it's the universally agreed upon answer. But wait, someone else jumps in with, well, if a 12-year-old thinks they want it, they should be allowed. Hold up, a 12-year-old? The same demographic that thinks eating Tide Pods is a good idea? This is the age where they're still arguing about whether dinosaurs could beat up dragons. Maybe let them figure out bedtime before tackling gender surgeries.
What age should someone be allowed to get surgery and transition fully?
I think the easy answer is 16 to 18.
What, so could a 12-year would you be comfortable with a 12-year-old getting surgery, for example, or a 14-year-old?
Well, it's not my place to really get in the way of telling, what a 14-year-old or something should do, but I think that if they think that they want this, then they should be allowed to have it.
But it's interesting you mentioned 16. For you, that seems like an age where underneath that you wouldn't be happy about the idea of someone, if it was available to them.
Maybe. I mean, maybe like a year or two after maybe thinking about it or contemplating starts. So 7 or 8 if they're 10, 11, 12. If it's this is a through line and it's been giving them maybe issues with mental health, if it's this is a recurring theme, then maybe pursue that. Sure. Because it's just a different form of therapy.
How many genders are there? Asked the interviewer, clearly hoping for a straight answer. Instead, they get hit with an infinite amount. Infinite, like the stars in the sky, like the grains of sand on the beach, like the number of times people will misuse literally today. The student elaborates, it's about your expression of yourself. It doesn't have to be a number. At this point, the interviewer looks like they're regretting ever asking, wishing they'd just Googled it instead.
If I was to say to you how many genders are there, what would you say?
I'd say that there's definitely more than 2. I think it's a far more complicated and personal set of things than you can be easily even put to a number. Really.
Sure, okay. How many genders are there then?
An infinite amount.
Infinite amount.
So, don't want to as many as you want.
Yeah,
you just talk to the person and find out
yeah.
what they feel. I think it needs
So what? Limitless.
a binary number, because when you bring in things like he, they, that's just it's more like your expression of yourself. It doesn't have to be a number. I think that's
gender's very
outdated.
Yeah, gender's outdated, and there's also a lot of different things you can put in within gender, because there's gender is identity, expression, and then pronouns and gender doesn't have to be aligned. It's all very different. So and also the only real person who needs to know a person's gender is themselves, because it's a very personal thing, and a very a thing that people will express or want to keep private. So I think there's 2 sexes, there's male and female.
Sure.
But gender, there's as many as people want there to be.
I have a few friends who identify with a variety of different genders. I think it's less of a it's more of an identity thing rather than any amount of how many it is. I'm sure there are many that I don't know of, and many that I do.
Sure.
So,
but there's more than 2.
Yes, I would say so. There's 2 biological sexes. I think gender is a matter of spectrum.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I personally believe that gender is a social construct. People can use whatever pronouns that make them feel comfortable, basically.
So as in gender and sex are 2 different things?
Yes, I believe, at least personally.
Sure, okay, fine. So how do you identify then?
I'm not really sure.
Sure, so okay, that's
Still figuring it out.
Enter the feminist rebuttal about safeguarding. Trans women face misogyny too, someone counters. And while that's an important point, the real takeaway here is that nobody wants a security guard checking ID cards outside the stalls. Imagine explaining that job on LinkedIn. The pièce de résistance? The scenario of a guy in a dress walking into the women's restroom. Cue the awkward silence as the student replies, "That's a complicated question." Translation, I need more coffee before I even attempt to unpack that can of worms.
I'm trying to get my head around the language. If you're a trans woman, so that means that you've transitioned. So you were a cis male, I think that's the language, and you're now a trans woman, and the feminists say you should not be allowed to use a female bathroom. So it's all very well talking about ideas, and I like that. But in terms of practical application in some of these areas that are more about the LGBTQ plus community, what are your thoughts as a female who identifies as a female? What do you think about trans women, I think that's the right term, using female bathroom?
I think it's fine. I think that people can use whatever bathrooms they want.
What about the feminists who say that there's a safeguarding issue there? That's what generally speaking, the feminists now are talking about safeguarding issues.
I wouldn't really call them feminists if they're like not including trans women in their agenda.
Because trans women are women?
Yes.
And is that your personal belief?
Yes.
And trans men are trans men are men?
Yeah. If they identify as that, or they might identify as like non-binary or whatever. But yeah, whatever they identify as.
That's like the purpose of the bathroom. You just walk in and anyone could be in there. It's gender neutral. It doesn't matter. Okay,
so at the other end, what if I tomorrow morning dress up as I look right now, but I get into a dress, heels, whatever, and I walk into a female bathroom? Is that okay?
I feel like this is quite like a very like complicated and loaded question to ask someone. Like, I don't really have the exact answer.
Well, just your thoughts, because that's what the feminists are saying in terms of safeguarding, is that actually there's a big problem there, but the trans community says there's no problem. So it's about getting your own opinion.
Yeah, well, I think that trans women should obviously be allowed to go into female toilets. Yeah, it's just I don't know. It's quite a hot topic.
It's a difficult question, but I think it's a completely legitimate one for people that say that there are many different genders and we should address with pronouns. So, for example, let's just say that as I look today, tomorrow I go into a female bathroom and I'm dressed in a certain way, and someone says, "Oi, mate," or "Oi, sir, you can't go in there," or whatever. So it's not just about pronouns and about asking people how many genders there are. It's about the practical application. So fundamentally, in terms of the trans movement and bathrooms, is it the case that a trans woman, is that the correct, that they should be allowed to use female bathrooms?
They should be allowed to use women's bathrooms, yes. Sex and gender aren't inextricably linked. They aren't linked at all, really. Gender is a social construct. It doesn't exist. It's about making sure that people are safe, because, trans women face misogyny too. They face exponential amounts of violence. It doesn't have any implication on which bathroom people go to. People say it's a women's safeguarding issue. I am absolutely a feminist, but I do not see this as a women's safeguarding issue. You do not have security guards standing at the doors to gendered toilets saying, "Let's see your genitals. We need to make sure you aren't trans." The fear very much seems to be about cisgender men dressing up as trans women and causing attacks and harms.
A guy like me dresses up tomorrow morning, I wake up looking at the way I do, and I put a dress on and I start going into female bathrooms because of how I identify, which obviously links to pronouns. What are your thoughts on that?
It's a really good question. I think it can be quite an easy way for a man who wants to assert some dominance, who disagrees with the whole pronoun situation, to waltz into a female bathroom with a dress on and say, "I'm allowed to be here." But I think that is a small minority. It's going to make people uncomfortable. I don't think that would affect me as much. Obviously, I don't go into women's bathrooms either as wearing a dress or born as a woman.
Listen to your kid, let them explore, says one student. Good advice, right? But then we veer into try different clothes, different haircuts, see if they like it. Sure, because nothing builds a child's confidence like turning their identity into a shopping spree at Forever 21. But wait, there's a twist. If they come home and say, I want to drink vodka, you say no. That's too dangerous. Ah yes, the classic clothing is harmless, vodka is not parenting mantra. What if the kid wants to drink vodka while trying on clothes? Philosophical loophole? Anyone?
On that then, right, tough question. What of that of a 6-year-old saying to mum and dad, what you're saying is that I identify or I feel as XYZ. What should the parent do? What's your advice? Nice and broad, could be anything, but they say something along those lines.
I mean, I just think listen to them, do what they choose. Like, I know there's like obviously like permanent things you can do with like transgender stuff, but maybe just support them until they're old enough that the parents like are happy for them to make permanent decisions. But until then, just listen and be open.
Yeah, definitely. Like, even like from the start, like just make it a place where they feel like they can come to you with those questions, and make it a space where you're not like labeling them as like definitely a boy, definitely a girl, or like definitely gay, definitely straight. Just like make it like an inclusive place where like if they are thinking that, then you just be like, yeah, I hear you, I see you. Do you want a different pronoun, a different name? How can we support you in this? And it's like, see, because children are ever changing, ever growing. Same with adults, like people change, people like experience different things and go, oh, actually I want to be this or this. So really just be open and like listen to them.
So a lot of times it's just like, we'll try different clothes, we'll try a different haircut, we'll see if we like it. If you really hate it, you know, there's no harm, no foul.
So obviously just good parenting 101, listen to the child, ask them how they're thinking, feeling, but equally if a child came home and said, just to be devil's advocate for the audience, if a child came home and said, I want to start drinking vodka straight from the bottle.
No, you say no, that's too dangerous, you're too young.
It's like, it's important to just be there for your kids rather than try and impose something on them. You can like obviously let them know how you're feeling, but respectfully be able to listen to what they are trying to express to you and like not coax anything that you want to hear back out of them.
So what would your advice be to parents where a son comes home and starts saying things like, oh, I think I might be female, or am I a woman, or whatever?
I think there's a level of exploring. Obviously you've got to be aware of age, but the parent is realistically in control until they're sort of early teens, I'd say, and then it sort of becomes an increasingly balanced relationship to a more 50-50 thing and a more independent thing for the child as they get 18. So earlier on it's sort of, okay, you feel this way, let's talk about it, but I make the final decision as the parent, and then it moves into if you want to wear a dress, that's your thing, let me support you in that.
Well, yeah, I'd say be supportive of your child and try and talk through their development, but also your child will know who they are and stuff. I think to the encouragement to be open with your growth as a person is really important. I think that, I don't know, sometimes it can be pushed down, and that can lead to some really difficult times when you're repressing who you are.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've just, people have referred to me as she, and I've been like, oh, not she, it's they. And then they're like, I'm so sorry, I didn't know, I'm trying to do so much better. And at the end of the day, you're then putting the onus on trans people for taking the responsibility for your mistakes. You're allowed to make mistakes, that's why we're correcting you, so you can do better and move on. But you're putting trans people in a really uncomfortable position when you make them try to make you feel better or alleviate any guilt. I think it is about being patient with people, but also we're not just going to be patient for anyone, because you need to actually be making an effort. These are new things and they do take time to learn, but you actually have to be putting in the effort. You can't just expect trans people to forgive you wherever you go.
We're treated to a tour of flags: trans, non-binary, progress pride, and Batman, Superman. It's like a PowerPoint presentation meets Comic-Con. One student even says, this shows people I'm inclusive, because nothing screams inclusivity like needing an entire bag to carry your identity merch.
Pronouns, should we all be using them? To a layman person, how does it work? Should we be using them, and what are they?
I mean, we should all be using them. I mean, unless you don't want to use them, but that would be an identity on its own.
Today is International Pronoun Day, apparently anyway, so I've been told. if I'm wrong on that, then is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
So all my badges, they're all very personal to me and my symbolism, and I have a lot of different flags. So this is just the classic transgender flag.
Right.
So anyone who doesn't identify with the gender that was assigned at birth.
I know that one, yeah.
Yeah, and then this is the non-binary one, which is the one I use. So that's for anyone who, again, isn't a man or a woman, whether that's a trans woman or a trans man.
Yeah.
And then, and then this, where's the, and this is the progress flag. So this is the normal, the gay flag that everyone knows, like the rainbow.
Some of them I know, yeah. That's
yeah,
great.
and then this is the progress one. So again, it's just the typical rainbow that Gilbert Baker created in the early 2000s. And then this is the progress one, which was created, I think, 2020 by a black woman of colour. And the white, blue and pink show the transgender people in the community, and the brown and black show the people of colour in the community.
And then there's Superman and Batman, and they seem to be kissing.
They're gay.
They're engaging in a warm embrace.
Of course, yeah. I love all my badges kind of like show to other people like the values that I have and like the inclusion I have. So I have like loads of ones which are like obviously refugees are welcome, and like the gay community, the trans community. I have like ones about like sustainability, all of that, just to show people that like I'm like an inclusive person and like this is who I am, and like you can express yourself however you need to be.
Yeah, well, I have to ask because I've not seen that before. Emma, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bless you.
Thank you so
Have
much.
a great day.
Have a great day.
Sure. So generally speaking, if let's talk about you as the individual. If someone, so for me, you're a female, but that might offend somebody who was non-binary. Is that correct? I'm learning as I go.
Well, I present as a female and I identify as a female, so that's fine to me. Obviously, if you assume someone else's gender and they are not identifying as that gender, that would offend them. So usually I would just not assume.
Next we have Piers Morgan, who just brought his A game, and he's aiming straight at modern day woke culture like it owes him money. According to him, the OG definition of woke was about fighting for racial and social equality. Think 1960s civil rights, not 2020's Twitter rants. But today's version, he's not mincing words. He calls it fascism. Yikes.
You've seen how this has got progressively more, let's say, the world has got progressively more woke. I think algorithms and Twitter...
The world has moved from being woke
right, okay,
by the original... Right. I think that most people in the 60s, 70s and 80s wanted to see better racial equality and social equality. Most people. But that's what the original definition of woke was. The modern day woke is nothing to do with that. The modern day woke is a form of fascism. Okay, so you will abide by our rules or you get destroyed. That's the difference to me.
So the world has got more of this modern day wokeism, right? And I've seen it on social media, the way that algorithms work as well. They show you more of the same. They keep reinforcing you. Then because you build an audience of the same people, they clap more when you say a certain thing.
Yes,
kind of reinforces
you. Preach to your choir.
Yeah.
You know, the analogy I would use, you go back 2,000 years, we lived in tribes.
Yeah, that's right in your book, yeah.
Right, and I told the story, you never used to come out of your tribe. So everyone in the tribe would look the same attitudes, eat the same food, drink the same drink, same senses of humor, because you never moved out of this group of people. And then people began to move out of their tribes and meet other tribes who dressed differently, thought differently, laughed at different things, maybe spoke differently. And both tribes in that moment decided the only answer to this was to kill each other. Well, that's where we've gone back to.
Are you optimistic?
Not really, no.
So this is what I wanted to say is your antidote for this new wokeism is to lead and to create a counter-narrative, which is what you're doing with your new show, Piers Morgan Uncensored. It's what you did with your book as well. Are you optimistic deeply that will win?
Well, let me ask you a question. So I'm described as highly controversial, right? I've been called all sorts of names. People say that things I say are outrageous. When you read my book, how many times did you stop and think, well, that's outrageous?
No, I didn't really disagree with anything.
Right. So that's my point. I don't think I'm the controversial one. Well, I think I come at this from a reasonably common sense
in your book,
perspective.
I didn't disagree with you at all. Because you were talking about things like popularism and liberalism and how it's changed. I completely agree. I think I used to identify as being on the left. Now I don't, because because
they're nuts, a lot of them.
Yeah, a lot of it is absolutely nuts. I also don't really identify with being on the right either, because they're nuts as well.
I agree.
So I find myself in this.
You get nuts on both sides, and we're moving to the extremities.
But I'll get cancelled from both sides because I don't wear the football kit of either.
I'm the same.
Yeah.
So I want to bring back a more consensus-related society, where you reach points of agreement through debate, and you don't try and shame or cancel each other for having different opinions. because that's at the core of this. You know, they call themselves liberals. They're not liberal. Liberalism isn't about an inability to tolerate other opinions. It's the opposite, right? You're supposed to tolerate and respect other opinions. And agree to disagree. We've lost this in society because a small group of people, but very vocal and very angry about everything all the time, they are driving an agenda which, if we go down that road, will be the end of a democratic society as we know it. So I see myself humbly as trying to defend democracy. Genuinely. I know, and humility is not something that comes naturally to me, but genuinely trying to defend what democracy really is and trying to educate these wokies about what real liberalism is, what democracy actually means, what free speech means. Free speech is not about you in an echo chamber all agreeing with each other. As Churchill said, free speech is about listening to views you just don't agree with, but allowing people to have different views.
What do you think? Are these moments signs of necessary growing pains, or are they warnings we need to take more seriously? Have we reached a point where the pursuit of progress blinds us to unintended consequences? Let us know your thoughts below. This is a conversation that's far from over, and if you found this breakdown insightful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more deep dives into the stories and ideas that shape our world. Until next time, stay curious and keep questioning.